Well, welcome back, everyone, to the Black Doctors Talk podcast. I am your host, Dr. Christopher Holmes, and a member of the Black Doctoral Network. Well, again, I did not come to disappoint you. I have another amazing guest by the name of Dr. Eric E. Handy. We're just going to call him E. Handy today, all right? We family today, okay, y'all? So we're saying E. Handy. E. Handy is a seasoned equity advocate, motivational speaker, multifaceted social justice educator, and counselor with a passion, get this, for service. So you always hear me talk about service and responsibility when you get the degree. He has over 10 years of experience as an educational professional working with underrepresented populations in K or really in higher education through holistic development. He's not afraid to talk about race and racism, which makes him a perfect guest for the podcast. I want you guys to welcome Dr. E. Handy.
Hey, that's a wonderful intro. Listen, I need to just record that and just play that whenever I go do some speaking engagements. That was brilliant. I like that. Appreciate it.
No problem. I'll slide that Cash App logo. We can just make it go that way. Well, listen, this is a side note, guys. I met Dr. Handy at the conference, so we'll talk about the conference a little bit later, but wonderful young man. I was excited to have him as a guest. We had a great dialogue, really brief at the conference. So I'm really excited to have you here, brother. Thank you for wanting to be a guest, and thank you for wanting to share with us. So let's start here. Tell everybody about not Dr. Handy, but who is young E. Handy? Who were you as a younger man?
Well, first, I would be remiss if I didn't just say I appreciate you, Dr. Holmes. I appreciate what the BDN, the Black Doctor Network, is doing, and the Black Docs Talk podcast. This is an excellent repository, a resource. This is a well of information and just legacy building. So I'm truly honored to have the opportunity to even be here to share my story and to talk about kind of my journey. So really, thank you. And I'm humbled for this opportunity. I appreciate it. This is everything. Because we got to do that. We got to build our own spaces. And that's kind of what my work is around is how do we build our own spaces that uplift us. But young E. Handy wasn't this refined. And sometimes I wonder if Dr. E. Handy is as refined as I like to think I am. But I would have to say young E. Handy was always curious, a lot of undisciplinedness and rambunctious. And wow, I come from a really big family. My family lineage starts in East Oakland, California, with Big Granny, Rochelle E. Caraway. She had eight children as a single mother. She went back to school as an adult learner. And that really provided the provision for what would be my journey, because I would end up going back to school as an adult learner. Right. And so young E. Handy was wild, because young E. Handy went through a particular process in which built me up for posture so I can get into my purpose. So you can't get into your purpose without going through the process, because you got to be postured for your purpose, because a lot of times your purpose is waiting for you, but you're not positioned in the right place to receive that purpose so it can be what is needed to be. And so I was really grateful for the provisions. But at the time during the process, I wasn't so much so. But I lived with all 8 of my grandmother's children at one point in time, including my mother. So I come from a level of instability. Right. I come from eating out of motels and begging for food. I come from being homeless. So there's a lot of trauma, emotional trauma, psychological trauma, and socioeconomic trauma in which young E. Handy had to go through in order to get to where I am today.
Preach, E. Handy. We just started. You're going to hit us up with like that in the beginning? Oh. Okay. All right. Let me get myself together, because see, we can go there now, but I'm going to try to hold off, because you just said a whole lot, as some of my friends would say. So with all of that going on, how were you able, and you just talked about you went to school as an adult learner, what brought you back to education?
Well, that's an excellent question. And I have to lay the foundation of context, right? Because the first institution that all of us, all humans end up learning from that really helps our identity development is the institution of family, regardless of how you define that family institution, inherited, biological, sociological, environmental, but the family structure really kind of dictates the beginning stages of what you are and how you see yourself in relation to the outside world. And so I talked about my grandmother who had 8 children and raised 8 children in the hood, like in the hood, right? In a 2-bedroom shack as a single mother who didn't pursue her education right away, but ended up going back to school at the age of like 30 something. And then would go on to get 2 degrees, one from the University of California, Berkeley. And so that resilience, that dedication and commitment to her educational learning and development played out into her children. So all 8 of her children would end up getting a college degree. Now, we come from a big family. Like, can you imagine one of those Medeas type plays and family reunion type things? So there's a host of 3rd generation cousins, 2nd generation cousins, grandkids and children. So Easter's, Thanksgiving, Christmas, birthdays, we always getting together. Now I'm in that 3rd generation tier, towards one of the younger 3rd generations, and all my cousins end up going to get their degree. So I was one of the few out of like a host of 20 that never had a college degree after going to high school, and then even after about a year or 2 removed from high school. And so you can imagine how it might felt going to family functions and people are talking about pledging, being part of the Divine Nine. People are talking about school alma maters, and you know, there's so much pride and honor and respect about, oh, go Bears, go here, you know, go there, all those type of things. And I would just be sitting around and it was like, look at this one here, right? The delinquent, right? The one that's been arrested, right? The one that was in jail, the one that's been shot, you know, different things like that. And so my first attempt at a college education came at the hands of my brother, Raymond Caraway, who was on a track scholarship in Atlanta, Georgia, and it was Tennant Clark Atlanta University at HBCU. And he told me, hey, for the fear of you going to jail or being dead, I need you to come to Atlanta because it's not safe where you're at. And so in 1999, I moved to Atlanta, Georgia, and I would attend the illustrious, the honorable, the one and only Morris Brown College out of the AUC.
All right. Okay.
So I spent 3 years at Morris Brown College, really trying to find my way. As the famous show goes, it was a different world for me, right? But I would end up leaving Morris Brown College because that was right around the time when they lost their accreditation and was no longer recognized by the consortium. And so even though I never technically graduated from MOB, affectionately known as MOB, I still claim it. It's still mine, right? So at the age of 21, I came home on a Greyhound bus, sleeping on my mama's couch, and she's on her 3rd, 4th, 5th marriage with a host of younger kids in the house with no college credits and a huge looming college debt over my head. And that was it. That was kind of like the beginning stages of what my process would be. But again, I talked about provision in the beginning because the seeds were already laid. The foundation was already laid. So every time I came around to family functions, even though I had attempted college, it didn't actually succeed in that first try. The seed was still there because it was so prevalent, and it was like, this is what you do. That's what we talked about, right? You go to school. This is the way out of poverty. You go to school. And my grandmother laid that foundation. And so what was real critical for me, I had an opportunity to engage in a summer literacy program, affectionately known as ACAP, or called the Accounting Career Awareness Program, which is a residency program for minority students to get exposed to the business and accounting and the world of finance. And you go stay on the college campus. Now, as a high school student, I actually attended this, living in my mama's house at the age of 21 after trying to do school for 3 years, just working, trying to figure out my way. I had an older cousin who now was running the program and said, hey, we have an opportunity where we need a counselor. And I was like, free food, free room and board, and they're going to pay me. It's the best thing going. So as the divine purpose would have it, I would go stay on that college campus for a week and was talking to high school students, just trying to help them figure out life. Now, this is why this is key. And this is why it's important that we have context and we understand the environmental context in which our the destinies is fermenting in, because oftentimes it's that context and it's that fermentation, that stewing, that marination process that prepares us later, propels us to go where we need to go. Because of this program and me being just random, but it really wasn't random, it was provision and working in my favor. At that program, I would come back every summer. And so over time, after like 2 or 3 summers, I started feeling like, well, I can't be encouraging students to go to college, and I wasn't myself in college. I felt very hypocritical. And it didn't help that, I would start going to the Christmases, and it's bad when your younger cousins are coming back, talk about they graduated from college, and you sitting around, talk about, what your folks is doing. Now, so I would eventually enroll in a California community college in one of my local California community colleges. And that was key, because that would, again, help me get to the path where I am today, working now full time in the California community colleges, right? Because of the open education institution that it is. And so I did that for 5 years, and I just kept chipping away at it. Riding home on that Greyhound bus back from Atlanta to the Bay Area after leaving Morris Brown, I made a commitment to myself and to God that I would find a way to do it eventually. I didn't know what that do it would look like, but I just made that commitment. And so that really started my journey. So from the time I got into the California community colleges to the time that I graduated with my doctoral degree, it took me about 20 years in that process. And so there's a lot of chapters in between that process, right? That has their own thesis, their own story, climax, and conclusion. But essentially, it took me 20 years to get through.
Now, like you just said, within those seasons, within those 20 years, a lot likely has happened.
Yes.
What was it, however, that made you say to yourself, I don't just want to get the bachelor's degree, right? I'm not just trying to wrap up those loose ends from Morris Brown. I want to continue to go on, and I want to get the doctorate. When did that seed become planted inside of you?
Well, for those who are hearing this under my voice, you got to be really grateful for your process, because it is your process that really provides the posture that you need. So this program, ACAP, I would go and do it every summer. And it got to the point where the board of directors said, hey, Eric, you're really good at this. We want you to now become the coordinator of this program. Now, let me just reverse the tape. I was a good student in elementary school. I was really bright, higher achievers programs, doing extracurricular things. Then life really started to take a turn and hit me as a junior high student and a high school student. I was living on my own during high school, had to go to night school. So there was a lot of economic and social and family things going on that just took my attention away from school. But in elementary school, I remember clearly always saying, they ask you write essays. What do you want to do with your life? What do you want to become? And I always said I wanted to be a lawyer, but I always knew before I had a name for it, I really just wanted to get paid to talk for a living. Then I said to myself, well, no wonder, right? I'm always searching for attention, but that's a whole nother story. But then I said to myself, I wanted to be an investigator, right? So I end up doing all three in my jobs now. It just not turned that. I talk for a living, I investigate systems for a living, and I help motivate and I pour into others for a living. So it all end up coming out, and I advocate. So I end up doing it. But to answer the question more succinctly, this program, ACAP, I would become a coordinator. And so I'm just going through the community college systems, taking time, trying to do it, taking classes, dropping classes, taking classes, dropping classes. Now I'm really understanding, majoring in business at the community college level. I end up seeing a counselor on a weekend, an older woman who was closing up shop and said to me, hey, you're my last student. I really don't want to be doing this, but let me sit down with you and plan this thing out. so I had spent 3 years in the California community colleges before meeting this woman. And then she sat down with me for 30 minutes and she literally said, here's and planned out everything I needed to do to transfer to a San Francisco State University where I would go and get my bachelor's degree. Before that time, I never thought I was going to graduate. I was just doing it because everybody told me that's what you should do, right? And so I would end up transferring to San Francisco State. I did San Francisco State in a year and a half, Dean's List, got in and out of that. And as I'm coming out of San Francisco State, it's the summer I graduated. Now, mind you, I had already done school for 3 years, done a community college for 5 years, done basically the 4-year level for 2 years. So this is like 10 years. This is a decade of going to school. I was done. I had majored in communications. I thought I was about to be P. Diddy and run a record label and be a rapper, right? And so I graduated that summer. I'm doing the summer literacy program, ACAP, and one of the board of directors, her name is Joy. She says to me, hey, Eric, you're really, really good at this stuff, teaching students, talking to kids. Did you know that they have a program for educators called a counseling program at St. Mary's of College of California? This is a little LaSallian school out in the Bay Area, out in Moraga. And she said, you know, I sit on the board of directors for this initiative, and they're actually looking for Black males. And I think I could get you a scholarship so you could go. You would be amazing at this. Now, mind you, I had no interest in going on and continuing my studies. I was like, no, I'm about to get a job. I'm about to run a record label. I'm good. Thank you, though. A couple months later, I didn't get no job. I wasn't running. Needless to say, I wasn't turning into Diddy. I wasn't running no record labels, right? It wasn't no Jermaine Dupri. And come that following January, I had started the program. And so I pause and say, you asked me what continued for me to do it. It was provision in my process. God had put different people in my life and wanted me in different positions and in situations, right? That then those people could plant seeds and pour into me that would help me be postured for my purpose. I did not choose this particular vocation. The vocation chose me. Yeah, really and truly. So that's how I ended up in my master's program as a counseling psychologist at St. Mary's College of California because of Joy. Now, mind you, just a quick to-do. I never got that scholarship, y'all. No, wasn't no money. I seen Joy like a couple of years ago, random at a concert. I said, Joy, man, what happened to my scholarship? We both laughed, but that
hey, I got you in though.
It did get me in. But that master's program was one of the best things that ever happened to me personally and professionally.
Yeah. And sometimes those things that happen to us that we don't plan are the best things that ever happened to us. And I keep hearing you saying provisions and posturing, but I also hear you saying when the opportunity arises, your job is to simply say yes.
Yeah.
That's it. Don't reject it, even when it feels uncomfortable or if you feel unsure. If you feel that it's being given to you, or as you would say, it chose you, just say yes and go with it.
Yeah. No, we there's a word over your life from the womb.
Yeah.
And then that word is continually matriculated and developed over you. Now, God's job is to make sure that that word comes through. Your job is to be aligned or postured to receive the word, because the word is already there and it's manifested and it's just waiting on you. A lot of times what happens is we going off the path because we're trying to control the way, what it looks like, how it feels, when it comes, the way it comes, to the extent that we receive it. And what I've learned through my journey is every time I let go and truly, as they say colloquially, let God take the wheel, it's actually worked out for my benefit. Now, it don't always feel good. I'm just going to throw that out there. It don't always feel good, but it's always been divine purpose. And so I'm really a living example of what divine purpose can get you to.
That's it. Just go ahead and say it now. If we're going to preach, Handy, we got to preach. It didn't feel good, but it turned out for my good. Now let's just go ahead and just keep it the way we need to talk about it.
Listen, I don't mean to be so preachy. Let me try to get more collegial scholarly on you.
Well, we talk about the connection between the spiritual, the mental, the physical, and the intellectual. So you're encapsulating all of that together at one time. And so I love, and who cares? This is your time. This is your interview. This is your podcast. So I want you to show up as you always do, authentically as E Handy. And that's why I'm calling you E Handy, not even Eric.
Yeah. No, it's important. You know, all my life, again, I said I lived with a lot of different people. So I learned very quickly how to be in a room and unseen, how your existence is there, but you're put to the margins, you're devalued. And, you know, growing up, again, I was an unruly child. You talked about kind of what was a young E Handy. I was undisciplined a lot, right? And I didn't really know how to adhere to structure. Obviously, I ain't just answering the questions you want to. So I guess that's still prevalent, right? But, you know, people always told me to shut up, stop talking, you know, and what I'm here to help people hope to kind of take away from this is you were meant to do something, and don't allow the negative words trump what you know God word is for you. And so, yeah, I was meant to vocalize. I was meant to talk for a living. And so now I'm talking all the time, and it's hard to get me to be quiet. Yeah.
I love it. And so, and you said it, you know, a few minutes ago, even when you were younger, you knew what you wanted to do. You hadn't actually verbalized it, or you had not identified what that looked like specifically. And then you got lost along the way somehow, just trying to find yourself. It's just being young, as we all do, because everybody's journey is just not so seamless. And so we talked about San Francisco State, and then we somehow over time, posturing an opportunity, we go to St. Mary's College of California. And then in 2018, we started at Mills College to start our doctorate program. So let's talk about that 4-year journey. What was it like? What does it feel like? And then what got you to the end?
Well, interesting enough, my whole life and existence has been a series of divine provision. I talked about that program that I went to as a high school student. It was at Mills College. When I went back as a counselor, it was at Mills College. So when I got my master's, during the process of getting my master's, one of my mentors, Dr. Gloria Sosa, had said my first semester, this was her second semester at St. Mary's as a professor, my first semester in St. Mary's. She saw me, she said, my second semester in St. Mary's, she said, you are going to be Dr. Handy one day. That was one of the first things that she told me. And again, I looked at her kind of how I looked at Joy, like, y'all crazy, right? But when I graduated, I ended up becoming a member and part of a program called the African American Male Education Network and Development Organization, affectionately known in the California Community College system as AMEND. Now, AMEND is a program full of California Community College educators, leaders, and our whole goal is to mentor and develop Black males. We have about over $500,000 in scholarships that we've given out to African-American males in the California Community College system, have over 500 plus African-American community college male students that we've mentored. Every year we have an annual conference in Los Angeles, and this is comprised of about 16 to 18 board executive members. All the brothers have doctoral degrees. So I became a member, and I was one of the only ones, once again, kind of the story of my life, that didn't have the doctoral degree. So that seed, along with the seed that Dr. Gloria had put into me, gave me the ammunition to say, okay, let me do it. And then also when I left that Morris Brown, I said I would not come back to Atlanta, Georgia or Morris Brown until I completed it all, until I got my terminal degree. So, you know, there was things in me that was kind of motivating me to get through. Now, interesting enough, I am the only one of two out of all my family to have doctoral degrees. And so the process at Mills College was one of a homecoming. again, because it was a full circle moment for me, but it was really tough to get through. I went through my program. 2 years of it was happening during COVID. So a lot of the program transitioned very quickly to a tele type of education, which was an adjustment. Also, Mills College in the last year was going through a rebranding. So now it is called Northeastern College. And so that added another layer of pressure to my educational progress. But all of it actually worked in my benefit because it was a pressure cooker, right? Sometimes we get into these storms and we think the valley, we think the low point, we think the trials are meant to destroy us, but really they're meant to shape and mold us. And you got to count it all joy. And so that was really what got me through, knowing that there was a ticker. It was a time frame. Like, one, you're around a whole bunch of other brothers and you're doing a whole bunch of work and they expect your highest level of excellence. So I'm really grateful for men. But two, there's a timeline between when this institution is going to transition to another institution, and there's some real logistical barriers you need to get through if you don't get out in a particular time frame. So all of that kind of really helped me get through. Mills College is located in East Oakland, kind of where I grew up and piece of where I'm from, where my family's from. So I loved going to the campus there. So that was very interesting and fun. And it was a good program overall. It really helped shaped me, honing in on all of the research that I needed to end up doing what I wanted to do in the California community college systems.
So when you finished, let's just be real. How proud were you to receive that degree?
One of my greatest achievements, because it took me literally 20 years.
Yeah.
It took me 20 years to get from the starting point to then. And it was one of the biggest commitments I had ever made in my life, right? And I told you I moved around a lot. I had a lot of transitions growing up as a young adolescent and a young adult. And so being able to be committed to something was a huge development for my character, personally and professionally. And so, and now I'm in a space where I can tell, and this is what I do, I tell other young brothers, you too can make it. It doesn't matter if you don't have the money. It doesn't matter if you came from a family that never did it. It doesn't matter if you had got sidetracked, right? It doesn't matter if you've been incarcerated. It doesn't matter, right, if you didn't think that you have the aptitude, the intellect for it. It is possible. And so that is going to be part of one of my legacies, is really being an example of what it looks like to get to your purpose through a process, right, that has you postured for your purpose.
Yeah. Wow. This really could be a 2-day interview, to be honest with you. I'm enjoying talking with you. So you finished the doctorate. Now, how do you position yourself differently to do the work that you now know you were called to do to make a difference?
Ooh, I like the way you reframed that. How do you position yourself differently? The doctor doesn't make or break you, for me, but it does set you up in the system that we work in, the higher education system, as more validated.
Yes.
And what I've recognized very quickly is when they see the letters after your name, they automatically assume you have a higher level of expertise than somebody that does not, which is not always necessarily the case, but I start using that to my advantage, right? But I've since I've come into the higher education system, I've been doing the same work, calling out racist infrastructures and systems in the higher education world, advocating, supporting, and pouring into Black and Brown students, specifically Black and Brown Black and Brown males, and counseling and working to help reframe this paradigm of what the education system looks like. You know, the education system inherently is not for the Black body. not for the brown body. And for the Black and brown body, the education system, as we know it in America, specifically the California college, community college system and higher education, is a hostile and a toxic environment. And so a lot of times what's happening is students are getting into spaces in the education system, spaces literally financial aid office, literally the counseling office, literally the classroom, the yard, right, are getting into spaces that are counterintuitive and counterproductive to their narratives, their stories, their identity, and their existence. And so they've already struggled, a lot of them, especially when you come from inner cities dealing public institutions and education systems that devalued them there. So they're grudgingly or begrudgingly coming into higher education thinking, well, this is what I'm told to do. This is the only way for upper mobility and socioeconomic status in the society. So I'm going to go do it reluctantly, dragging my feet. And when they get there, they don't often make it out because they don't see people like them in the classroom, and or their stories reverberated in a way that highlights their excellence. And so what I am doing and what I continue to try to do is infuse at all times I can the Black excellence, Black stories, Black intellect, and do it in a way that frameworks we need to not try to correct, but destroy and rebuild what the education system model is.
Oh, okay. Let's just go a little bit deeper. The work that you're doing is tiring work. And everyone is not ready for the conversations that you're wanting to have in certain communities, certain landscapes, and certain institutions. How can you, or how are you making your way into these or navigating into these different spaces to ensure that the messaging you're trying to get across is heard?
This is cliche, but I'm a firm believer. It's all about relationship building. I may not be the most knowledgeable on infrastructures and how to do the day-to-day minutia, right, of this and that and pull the levers and the clicks. But I know how to talk, build, and form communities, right? It's about a social cultural formation. In other words, how do we improve personal and social confidence and develop social skills within these infrastructural barriers? And so I'm really good at forming allies. I'm really good at forming co-conspirator relationships, right? And I've gotten a lot more productive, I would say, and a lot more intentional about the ways in which you streamline messaging. Mm-hmm. The higher education system in California is extremely political. It's highly based on how you say what it is you say and say it in a way that doesn't offend people. We're really living in a society right now in a time that offense is running rampant, and it's really about, one, not dumbing down yourself, two, having a way to articulate the premise of what it is that you're trying to get through, and then three, tying all that into your story. You know, Zora Neale Hurston once said, tell your story, because if you don't, they'll kill you and said you enjoyed it. So at every instance that I get, I'm finding a way to tell my story. That's the reason why I started this whole podcast episode with really kind of outlining the steps in my story, because our stories are valued, right? And so the way in which we need to show up, and that's, I'm going to say need, is we need to have more unapologetic stance on Black lives matter, Black intellect matter, Black culture matter, and not having to justify why it is because it is. And the sooner we can get to that as educators, as leaders in the political higher educational system, I think the sooner we can get to destroying and rebuilding what the system looks like and how the system then approaches us and receives us as we try to infuse culturally relative curriculum and pedagogy into the institutional framework.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. And the one thing I want people to take away from this interview based on what you're saying: don't change your views. Don't change what you know your purpose is. It's one thing to be bold. It's another thing to be strategic and productive. And if your boldness is not ending in productivity, you got to change your approach.
Yes.
Got to change your approach.
Yeah.
So you said that you had made a promise to yourself on that Greyhound bus. I'm not gonna call it Greyhound, that Greyhound bus back to California,
Like that
you would not return back to Atlanta until you have the doctorate.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know just recently you returned back to Atlanta for our conference, and you did not come empty-handed. You came with that doctorate in hand. So talk about that moment, how that felt, and then talk about your experience at the conference.
Walking back on the campus that I loved, and seeing Morris Brown back in the consortium, right? Shout out to the president of Morris Brown College. He's doing a great job right now. Hashtag the hard reset was an emotional wave, and it was a spiritual rebirth, because it really showed me that anything is possible. Being in the Black Doctoral Network Conference in its 10th annual was so reaffirming to see so many people like me, like-minded folks in one space at one time. I'm telling you, there is nothing like having Black people congregate, whether it's the church, whether it's at a hoop game, whether it's on the yard, and especially when we all together holding up our papers, and we're all there to talk about our research and our work. It is a dynamic energy, right? It's kinesthetic. And that's because it derives from our ancestors in Africa, right? They were a communal people. And when we got together, we beat it on djembe drums, right? We told folklore, we shared stories, which then gave legacy and meaning to our existence. And that's what I got there. And you don't have that often in a lot of ways in the West Coast. That's why what Amen does at its annual conference every year is so invigorating, because it's one of the few moments where you get 1,000, 2,000 Black male, Black female professionals, students in one building, and there's just this synergy that's organically fermentating and just kind of rises to the top. And I loved it. I was so enthralled by being the BDN. It was one of my first times being there. I'm looking forward to coming back again. Look, a little shameless plug. I'm hoping I can become a keynote speaker at the next one. Shameless plug. Yeah. But I worked with a colleague of mine, one of my mentors, Dr. Terrence Elliott, to create a program in the California Community College called the African American Male Leadership Program. And the program was all about creating sacred and safe spaces for Black male convening. That's what the BDN conference was for me: a sacred and a safe space for us to convene, a space for us to come be our unapologetic true selves, a safe space for us to come and get reinforced, reinvigorated, motivated, poured into, and then shaped and molded so we can go out in our individual spheres, our individual circumstances and communities, and then continue showing and epitomizing Black excellence. And we have to create those spaces in the education system. We need to create those spaces in the community, right? A lot of times we don't see positive spaces of Black community like that. And and it's really a shame. Let me just throw this out there. Really, it's a shame that what's put on broadcast television is not that. Only time you see Black folks really congregating is if there's a fight, there's something negative happening, or we have some kind of sporting or entertainment event. But BDN needs to be televised, right? And just like they did Black Girls Rock, I'm really going to start advocating that we find a way to get BET or some other network to pick up the BDN annual conference. We need some network to pick up the Amen conference, because these stories and these spaces are not just good for the Black community and Black culture, but it's good for all community and all culture. You see that right now, the way they are trying to take over hip hop, right? And so hip hop is from the Black community and Black culture, which came from R&B, which came from jazz, which came from African dance. So it's all connected, and I loved it. I'm looking forward to the next one.
Well, listen, we're excited to have brothers like you as a part of the network. You are phenomenal. You're doing great work. I'm excited about your future and what that looks like in the next 5 to 10 years. World, get ready. E Handy is coming. He's coming. He's stomping through the yard. I'm telling you, he's coming to do some work, and he's coming to change some lives. But the thing I love most about you is your commitment to service and to mentorship. That is critically important in the work and the responsibility that we have now with these titles, as you said, that very few of us have. We are one of very few in a community. And oftentimes we get sidelined and thinking that what we have is normalized, and it's not.
No,
it is not.
Yeah, we're definitely part of the talented 10th.
Yeah. So thank you so much, E Handy. Thank you for being here with us and sharing with us. I do want you to share with our viewers and listeners where they can go to learn more about you and the work that you're doing. So go ahead and share that with them.
Yeah. Again, I appreciate this opportunity. You can follow me on all the social media platforms at Professor Ehan. That is ProfessorEhann. We have a podcast out right now. I Am Healing in Music. So that's on your streaming platforms. Working on a weekly radio show that should be coming out the beginning of next year. And then also we have some literary projects in the work as well. So we are all about the premise of each one, teach one, lift as you climb, lift as you climb. And so we're building, and it's just a pleasure. Again, I can't thank you enough, Dr. Holmes. Now listen, I'm just gonna tell y'all real quick story. Dr. Holmes was doing this thing on the mic, right, at the annual banquet, at the conference. You know, he's smooching the crowd, running around. And I said, brother, I need to be on the podcast. And he looked at me, he said, I'm gonna get you on there, brother. And hey, he was a man, he was a man of his word. He was a man of his word. But listen, we have to speak up for what we want. We have to claim it and name it. So sometimes don't be afraid of your progress, and don't be afraid of what your story is. So name that thing out there, claim it. And for those who are going through their doctoral program right now, you will make it. Don't worry about it. Claim it and name it. So I appreciate you. I really appreciate you. I'm grateful. This was an amazing time. I look forward to some more time with you, brother, and just building with BDN.
Yes, sir. Name it, claim it, and then seek it.
That's it.
You got to go and get it. You can name it all day, and you can claim and say, it's mine, but you then got to go and get it. So thank you. You came and you sought me out, and you said, brother, and I said, I got you. Now, I still hold you to that trip to California. I'm coming out there, and so I'll be calling you up. No hotel fees for me. I'm staying with E Handy, y'all.
Hey, let's get it. I got you. Don't worry. We're gonna take you around, show you some sights. You know, it's gonna be a good time.
Awesome. Well, listen, guys, go follow Dr. Handy. While you're following Dr. Handy, please be sure to follow the Black Doctoral Network as well. We would love to connect and share with you as a part of our community. Until next time, guys, thank you guys so much for joining. This has truly been a pleasure. Catch me next time with another amazing guest. I promise to not disappoint. But until then, as I always say, be safe, be blessed. I love you. Peace out.